Thank you back, and welcome back to the stream. This is stream 3 of 4 for the Beta Earth card game video series. And so, welcome you back, and we're just going to cover the bread and butter of the game, combat. So, and actually, I do need to have one other thing out to be able to properly show this in all of its forms. So, all right, so we're going to move things around just a tiny bit, just so things are a little bit clearer. So let's do this. Okay, so we're going to assume that this is the scenario that we have. Okay, so this is what we're going to do. Let's assume that we're ready to do combat, and let's assume that me, player one, I decide to initiate combat as an action. So when you initiate combat, at that point, when combat is initiated, there are some things to keep in mind. First of all, is that no game effect or instant ability that is not combat related may be used during combat. So once combat has been initiated, and the only things that you can do for abilities or instant effects or anything that is tied to combat. You can't do, for example, discard and drop to your hand size. That's not combat specifics. You wouldn't be able to do that during combat once that has been initiated. So keep that in mind. Alrighty. Now the exception would be if it specifically says in the text that you can do this when combat's initiated or something to that effect. So we're going to assume that, again, I'm going to initiate combat. Now to initiate combat, what you're going to do is go ahead and exhaust the character that is initiating the combat. So, actually, I'm sorry, let's do it the other way around because you do have to have this. Okay, so when you initiate combat, you're always going to initiate combat against an opponent's location. So you're never going to attack ally versus ally or ally versus a persona just to attack them in and of themselves. No, you're going to go after locations because, again, that's the whole point. That is the emphasis. That is the lore behind the game. Again, you're trying to secure control of Beta Earth, whether for altruistic purposes or just because you are going to be playing a bad guy and you just want that power. It doesn't really matter. It's going to depend on what your character, what persona you're playing with. For lore-wise, what constitutes what you're actually trying to do. But technically, you're just capturing locations. So again, to initiate combat, you're going to attack an opponent's location. So what we're going to do for this scenario actually is say that my opponent is going to initiate combat against me because I have a location in play. So I have Barren Waste of Soul. That's what I have in play here. And then he is going to initiate combat against me. So what he's going to do is he's going to go ahead and initiate combat by exhausting his persona. So again, step one, you're going to, again, announce the target. Step two, actually, sorry, back up. First step is you're going to exhaust an ally in the field or persona in the field to initiate combat. Step two, you're going to go ahead and say the target of that combat, and that is going to be, whatever one location you select that's your opponent has in play. So in this case, he's selecting my Barren Waste Soul. So he's attacking that location to try and capture it. So when he does that, then I get to respond by deciding which character I want to have answer that or to respond to defend. So I will exhaust my soldier as the defender to defend against that attack. Now it's going to go back to the attacker. At this point, he could pass, and that point it would go back to me to decide if I'm also going to pass or if I'm going to add somebody else to the combat. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. Now, there's something to keep in mind, again, as outlined in the previous video. Again, you don't unexhaust your exhausted cards until the beginning of your next turn. So it's going to be very important, and you have to be very strategic about what you choose to involve in combat. What are you going to exhaust, whether defending or attacking? Because again, You won't get to ready cards. You don't drop to your new hand size until your next turn. So anything you expend on your turn will be lost for during your opponent's turn as well, for defending in the case of combat, or card play in the case of card play with their resources. So you do have to keep that in mind. But Mandala is a 4/4. My defender is only a 2/2 with a 1 health, actually a +1 health because of General Rikers. So she's a 2/2/2. So a 4/4, and also protagonists always have 10 health. Your persona always has 10 health. But we'll worry about health later. We're just looking at combat right now. So we're just worrying about attack and defense values right now. So again, attack 4, defense 4, and she's attack 2, defense 2. So we are dealing with a 4/4 versus a 2/2. So if I were to pass, then he could add another person there and make it an even bigger win, or any number of different things. So I'm not going to let that happen because I want to keep my location. So me as the defender, actually I defended, I'm sorry. So the attacker, I'm sorry, is going to go ahead and add the freelance freighter. So they're going to exhaust the freelance freighter. So now the attack is a 5. And again, every combatant, and again, any ally or persona that's involved in a combat is called a combatant. So any combatant that is, involved in combat is only involved in that one combat. And again, like I said, it'll be out for the remainder of your turn during your opponent's turn, normally. So he's sort of leaving himself open with this, but he does want to win this. So he's going to go ahead and exhaust the freelance freighter on the attack. My response and defense is he's definitely winning. So I'm going to exhaust General Rikers. Will also leave me open, but I want to, again, defend. So I'm going to have General Rikers join combat as a combatant. So I'll exhaust. Goes back to him. He's going to pass. He has nothing else he wants to do. It's going to go back to me. I'm going to pass. So now we both pass consecutively. So again, we initiate combat, designate the target, assign combatants. We've done the first 3 steps. Then at that point, you will then go ahead and be able to then maneuver. That's a term in this game. So to maneuver in combat means you're going to go ahead and take any ally in hand, and you're going to put it face down and designate it when you do, whether it's going to add to your attack or defense total. And again, all combatants' attacking defense values will pool into one combined value for the combat. So, but anyway, so I'm going to say that Mundala is going to go ahead and put this down as a bonus to the attack. So they're going to maneuver. So they're going to put this down, and then again, the attacker is going to maneuver first. Then the defender will be able to again decide if they want to maneuver, and they're going to maneuver as well. So, but they're going to add to, the defense. So adding to attack, attacker's adding to the attack, defender's adding to the defense. So, and then it goes back to them. Now you can do multiple cards on a maneuver. You can, put down multiple cards on maneuvering. You don't have to just do one, maneuver once. But they're going to pass and I'm going to pass. So we both have finished. So that, again, the next step we just resolved here was maneuvering. Now we're going to reveal our cards. So I'm going to reveal what I maneuvered and the value that they did. Now, what value is added? Well, that's the other value on allied cards. Allied cards here have a combat value in the upper left-hand corner. So that number in the green circle, that's the combat value. So these were discarded, so she's going to add 2 to the defense, and I'm going to add 3, and so I'm adding 2 to my defense total, and he's adding 3 to the attack total. So now we compare numbers. So it's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So total is 8 attack. My defense was 3. This is 4, 5, 6, 7. So 8 attack, 7 defense. Yeah. Now, for me, the defender, my total attack, my total attack was 4. My total defense was 6. So 2, 2, and 2. So it was a 4 attack and 6 defense total. We then compare numbers. The next step was to compare the values. So again, the combat is like Magic and other games where it is simultaneous. The defender will compare their defense value to the attack value of the attacker, and defender will compare their attack to their attack value to the defense of the attacker, and vice versa. So the easiest way to do is just start with the attacker's attack, compare it to the defense, and then look at the defender's attack and compare it to the attacker's defense. So again, that attack was 8. My defense was 6. So that is a difference of 2. So there is 2 combat damage. So we keep in mind of that, 2 combat damage on the attack. On the defender, my attack was 4, and the defense was 8 on the defense of the attacker. So in short, no combat damage from me, the defender, to the attacker, but 2 combat damage to me, the defender, from the attacker. So we've assigned values, we figured out who took combat damage and who did not. At this point, then the next step is resolve combat triggers, if any and if wanted. You don't have to do combat triggers. However, if you have multiple combat triggers you can only do one of those combat triggers. So combat triggers are things that you can kick off by virtue, and this is one of the cards here. So the 2 reference cards you get in the game is the combat trigger reference card, and those also go over in the rule book, but then you have the phases of a turn. So we're referencing the combat triggers here. So combat triggers, the attacker resolves his first. So there's no combat triggers on my allies on the attacker, but there is, if you look at the bio card, since the attacker has a persona, I look at the persona's bio card, and it has, and again, in the keyword traits portion, you see intellect. So if it is a bolded word, it's a keyword. If it's not bolded, it's a trait. So that's important in this game to know. Again, bolded cards are keywords, non-bolded cards are traits in this section. So protagonist, you don't need to worry about. That just tells you, again, this is going to be for a player deck, because this version of this persona is a protagonist. But here's the important part, intellect. So this does have a keyword, intellect. Intellect is a keyword that triggers combat, that will activate a combat trigger. So, and again, these are different ones. I won't go all of them because that'll take too time consuming, but again, this does have one, intellect. So if you look at intellect, it does have a combat trigger. Sorry, 1 second, it's just being really... Okay, so if you look at the combat trigger, outwit says activated via intellect. So this is going to activate. So that means that you look at so if you are successful in defending, then you're going to see how much the defender was successful versus the attacker. So the attacker was successful. I'm sorry. So I was not successful as a defender. So I actually, as a defender, don't have any keywords that I can do. So I'm going to not worry about that. The attacker was successful, 2 combat damage. So what they get to do is, if they're outwit, that in the reference card will tell you what to do. In this case, it'll have me mill cards from my hand and then followed by the draw deck. So I would discard cards equal to the combat value, equal to the combat damage. So you resolve that. So then you resolve the combat triggers. He's going to elect to do the outwit because of again, he was successful. There was combat damage. He was successful. And again, Undala has intellect. So he will trigger that. So his 2 combat damage. He's going to go ahead and the number and the degree that these combat triggers affect your opponent will be higher the more combat damage you do. The more the difference there. So these were discarded. They'd go to respective piles. We would go ahead and then we resolve the combat triggers. Now we're going to go ahead and assign damage. So we're going to assign the damage, and as the attacker, you get to decide where that combat damage goes for the defender. So he gets to decide where to put the 2 damage. He's going to choose to go ahead and put the 2 damage on General Rikers because he's a little bit more important. He's a bigger guy, so this will help. So he's going to put the 2 on there. So this reduces that to 0. So health in this game is damage is persistent. So he'll go ahead and do that. So he'll drop that health to 0, and then that's it. So you resolve the damage, and then at this point, then you would discard the casualties. So I would lose General Riker. He would be discarded to my discard pile, and that would be it. So that is, again, resolving combat. So in the case of your persona, if the persona takes 10 damage, then instead of being discarded, they would then be turned face down and go back automatically to your HQ, or whoever's controller's HQ, back to their HQ, whoever's is defeated. All right. So that's, again, damage there. Now, let's say, for example, let's assume that I had nothing to defend with. Let's say this was the scenario. I wasn't able to get anything out, and it was just this. I had an open field, and it was just Mandala out here. Then it would still work the same, except that you would not have any combat triggers firing off. Again, combat triggers, you have to have allies involved in combat to be able to trigger those off. So if it's unblocked and there's no one to defend, and you swing and it's going to hit the location, no combat triggers. But in this case, Mudala would exhaust, initiate the combat, target my Aberran Waste of Soul, and then there's nothing to compare with combatants. We would skip that step. We would skip the maneuvering and skip the combat triggers. So immediately we just go to assign damage right away. So for the way it works with locations, locations have an RV value. In other words, a resistance value. This one is 4. So her 4 attack, they have no defense, so it's just damage on damage. So the 4 attack would be 4 damage. So in that case, she would succeed, and I would lose this location. So what would happen is this location would be removed from play. This would go to a little stack on their side, where they would just keep track of victory points, and they would score victory points equal to the resistance value of the location. So go to the victory points, they would score the 4 victory points, and I would lose that location. So that's how that gets resolved. So that is combat in a nutshell. Try to make it as quickly as, try to make it as quick and as specific as possible. But in a nutshell, that is combat. In Beta Earth. So that's combat. Now, I don't think I need to cover anything else. That's the basics. That's really it. Anything more nuanced, I'll go over in a different video, but that is combat in this game, Beta Earth. So I appreciate your time. I appreciate you joining me. I hope that was clear enough for you to understand how combat works. I tried to make it as streamlined, as brief as possible for this description. Again, the rule book comes with the game. We'll include all the details to make it as as finite as possible. But that's it. So appreciate your time. Hope you have a wonderful evening, and join me for the final, fourth and final video of this sort of introduction to Beta Earth video series. Again, appreciate your time. Hope you have a great day and a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you on the last video. Thank you.